In our next story, we meet a woman who is keeping an age-old tradition alive, canning, like fruits and vegetables. But it's more than a story about preserving food. It's about embracing an important part of our past.
They're down there, right down here, baby. I got some to-go containers for you ladies who don't have time.
Most of us live and die in our community. You know, we breathe, we walk, we move, so knowing what goes on in your community is very important. And it gives you a sense of belonging, a sense of being a part of something. The community is what gives birth and nurturement, I guess that's the right word, to people. You grow and your community becomes your Mother Earth. Food, to me, is a very intimate commodity. There's nothing more intimate than food because they say you are what you eat. Food actually becomes you. So when you share food with someone, I think you're sharing something very spiritual and very valuable.
And that's what 67-year-old Etha Camille Robinson does. She shares food. Robinson has devoted much of her retirement to educating people in her community on her food passion, canning.
Oh, I can a variety of things. I do plum, a lot of jams and preserves, plum, peaches, apricots, fig, nectarine.
Canning has been around for nearly 3 centuries, and it is through this age-old art that Robinson reaches out to her community to bring a special piece of history.
If you don't have a good grasp of history, then you don't understand how things came to be the way they are today when you don't know the past.
Because, you see, a lot of our history was not told. We didn't see that as important.
Yeah.
Because there was so much stuff that you were ashamed of. And you didn't even want to.
Rather than embracing it.
Like when I remember when we would go, when John and I first got married, and he was in the service, and we would go somewhere, and we didn't want to tell anybody we were from Mississippi.
Mrs. Shame, yeah.
We would say, oh, we're from Chicago. Growing up in Mississippi was very different from my life now. Being a black and living in a community which was there from slavery time.
It was a time when African Americans were considered second-class citizens. Hutcherson, like many other women in the South in the 1920s, said she had to learn to be resourceful with food because it wasn't always so available.
We had to have 365 jars of something canned, and we had a whole cupboard just filled with canned foods, enough to last for a whole year.
Canning, says Hutcherson, represented the fond memories she had of Southern life, but there were other not-so-nostalgic moments that were about a more harsh reality for blacks in the South.
In high school, the young students decided that they would join in helping to desegregate the town. We'd all get together in the morning, get ourselves organized, decided how we were going to partner and do march on the downtown. And my cousin, Juanita, told her sons, "Don't you get in that line now. I don't want you. I don't know what those white folks are going to do to you." And he was standing there, and the policeman came by and said, "Why aren't you in the line?" He said, "I'm not going to march." He said, "Why aren't you going to march?" He said, "I'm just not going to march." He said, "You're a nigger, ain't you? Get in that line." And they pushed him in the line and made him walk. And I thought, oh my gosh, his mother's at home, and if she ever gets the word that her son is marching in that line, she's going to be having a stroke because she's going to be sure that the white folks are going to beat him up or going to do something bad to him.
The early 1900s were called by many African Americans the nadir, which means the low point. And that is because after slavery and the promise of emancipation, Jim Crow segregation was put in place to redeem the South. So many African Americans found themselves in debt into a slave-like sharecropping system.
Robinson was among those families that had to resort to sharecropping, a life that she says helped teach her to be resourceful.
I don't know if I understood the necessity of it. We probably just thought it was something that you did. Now I kind of look back and understand that it was part of our survival techniques. I always say a tree can live without limbs and leaves, but it can't live without roots.
roots are so important because that's your source of all your nutrients too. Many people nowadays are not canning, so it's a tradition that I want to keep alive. My grandmother can, my mother can. And usually people don't get a chance to eat homemade jams and jellies. So it's always a special treat for people to have plum jelly or fig jam or fig preserves. So I'm really concerned about teaching the younger women and men the art of canning, and also showing them how using the fruits that nature provides for us, rather than throwing food away, we can take it and put it to use, and it can be used later on in the year, like in the old days. You can use pickling spices, you can use mustard seeds, celery seeds, based on your taste, but just some form of spices. And then we'll stir it on the stove, and then we'll be ready to put it on the pickles. And so once the jars are sterilized, then you pour the liquid in here over the pickles. And just move it around in here, and the air comes out of the jar. Your sterilized jar top, after you've removed all the air bubbles out, then you place that on the jar. It's a way to pay homage to our ancestors, to affirm the worthiness of what they did. And it's also a means of utilizing food products that are already here. In other words, if we have plums, peaches that are already grown, why not use them? We can't eat them all at the same time, but we can at least preserve them for future use, as well as continuing an age-old tradition.